Imagine this for a moment. A private company with its own army, its own navy, its own prisons, its own colonies, its own money, and the legal right to start wars, not for a country, not for a king, for profit. This company existed, it was real, and it changed your life. Before you were born, before your parents were born, before modern nations even existed. Without this company, there would be no Wall Street, no multinational corporations, no global supply chains, no trillion-dollar firms, no financial empires. Everything you live inside today started here, in the year 1602, in a small country surrounded by water called the Netherlands. At that time, Europe was desperate. No oil, no factories, no machines, no digital economy. Wealth came from one thing, trade. And trade meant spices, pepper, cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon. These were not cooking ingredients. They were currency. They were power. They were status. They were survival. One bag of nutmeg could buy a house in Amsterdam. One shipment of pepper could make a man rich for life. Whoever controlled spices controlled money. And at that time, Portugal controlled everything. They owned the routes, they owned the ports, they owned the ships, they owned the prices. Everyone else paid. The Dutch hated this. They were traders, merchants, sailors, risk-takers. They refused to stay dependent, so they decided to break the system. They would sail to Asia themselves. No permission, no protection, no safety. Just money. Wooden ships and courage. Many never returned. Storms, disease, pirates, starvation, shipwrecks, failure. Families lost everything. Investors went bankrupt. Companies collapsed. Trade was too dangerous for individuals. Too expensive. Too risky. Then someone had a radical idea. What if no one traveled alone? What if thousands of people invested together? What if risk was shared, losses were spread, profits were multiplied? In 1602, the Dutch government approved it. They merged all major trading firms into one, the Dutch East India Company, the VOC. This was something new, something dangerous, something revolutionary. For the first time in history, a private company could sell ownership to the public. Regular people could buy shares. They could own part of ships, part of trade routes, part of foreign markets, part of distant profits, without leaving home. This was the birth of the stock market. This was the birth of shareholders. This was the birth of financial capitalism. Money changed form. It stopped being physical. It became abstract. You did not need land. You did not need soldiers. You did not need titles. You needed paper, contracts, numbers, and trust. And people trusted the VOC because the government backed it, protected it, defended it. The company received powers that no business should ever have. It could build armies, hire mercenaries, construct forts, control ports, sign treaties, declare war, mint currency, rule territory. It was a company with government authority, no king, no emperor, no dynasty, just shareholders. This was the moment when power separated from bloodlines and attached itself to money. The VOC raised more capital than any organization before it, built fleets of hundreds of ships, employed tens of thousands of people, connected Europe to Asia, Africa, the Middle East, China, Japan. It became the first global corporation. Amsterdam transformed. Banks multiplied, markets expanded, insurance appeared, accounting improved, trading floors formed. The modern financial city was born. People became obsessed with stocks. Prices rose, rumors spread, speculation exploded. Some became rich, some lost everything. Sound familiar? This was the first financial bubble, the first market mania, the first investor psychology experiment. And it worked. For decades, the VOC printed money, dividends flowed, investors celebrated. The Netherlands became the richest nation on earth. But this success hid something darker, because the company did not make money by trading fairly. It made money by controlling everything. And in part 2, you will see how the VOC used violence, monopolies, corruption, and fear to become more powerful than entire countries. How a company turned profit into domination. How trade became conquest. How shareholders became rulers. Because once you see what really happened, you will never look at corporations the same way again. The Dutch East India Company did not become powerful by being polite. It did not become rich by competing fairly. It did not dominate the world by following rules. It dominated through control, through pressure, through fear, through force. Once the VOC had money, ships, soldiers, and government support, it stopped behaving like a business. It started behaving like a state. Its main target was one tiny group of islands in modern Indonesia called the Banda Islands. These islands produced something priceless, nutmeg. At the time, nutmeg was more valuable than gold. It was believed to cure disease, extend life, protect against plague. Europe was obsessed with it, but the Bandanese people controlled the supply. They traded freely. They sold to whoever paid best, Portuguese, English. Chinese, Arab merchants. The Dutch hated this. They wanted monopoly. They wanted total control. So they made an offer: sell only to us, at our price, forever. The Bandinese refused. They were independent. They were traders. They believed in open markets. That decision destroyed them. In 1621, the VOC sent soldiers, cannon ships, mercenaries, executors. They surrounded the islands, blocked supplies, burned villages, captured leaders. Then they began executions. Thousands were killed. Many were enslaved. Others were deported. Entire communities vanished. The survivors were forced to work on Dutch plantations, producing nutmeg, only for the VOC, at prices set by the company. This was not trade. This was corporate conquest. And it worked. Nutmeg prices exploded. Profits multiplied. Shareholders celebrated. Nobody in Amsterdam asked where the money came from. And this pattern repeated across Asia, across Africa, across oceans. Wherever the VOC went, free markets disappeared. Local merchants were crushed, ports were seized, routes were controlled, competitors were blocked or destroyed. If English ships arrived, the Dutch attacked them. If local rulers resisted, the Dutch replaced them. If merchants disobeyed, the Dutch punished them. The company became judge, police, army, government, all in one. In Batavia, modern Jakarta, the VOC built its capital, a European city in Asia, with walls, cannons, warehouses, banks, courts, prisons. From there, they ruled trade across half the planet. And inside the company, a new elite emerged: executives, governors, managers, directors, men who never saw battle, never sailed, never suffered, but controlled everything. From offices, from ledgers, from documents, from contracts. They decided prices, routes, wars, all with signatures. Power became paperwork. Corruption followed. Officials took bribes. Managers smuggled goods. Governors enriched themselves. Billions in today's money vanished into private pockets, but profits were still massive, so nobody cared. Amsterdam stayed rich. Shareholders stayed happy. The machine kept running, and something dangerous happened. People stopped seeing violence. They saw returns. They stopped seeing suffering. They saw dividends. They stopped seeing nations destroyed. They saw stock prices rising. This is when capitalism learned something important. If profit is high enough, morality disappears. And this lesson never left. The VOC became a model. Other nations copied it. England created its own company. France followed. Spain tried. Corporate empires spread. Private companies ruled colonies. Not governments, not kings, not parliaments, shareholders. This is why modern corporations exist. This is why multinationals operate across borders. This is why CEOs influence governments. This is why money moves faster than law. Because 400 years ago, a company proved it could rule the world, but this system had a weakness: greed, corruption, arrogance, overconfidence. For almost 200 years, the Dutch East India Company looked unstoppable. It controlled oceans. It controlled spices. It controlled prices. It controlled governments, from Europe to Asia. Its flag meant power. Its ships meant money. Its contracts meant dominance. But inside the company, everything was rotting, slowly, quietly, invisible to outsiders. Corruption was everywhere. Officials stole cargo. Managers falsified records. Governors ran private businesses on the side. Warehouses were empty, but reports said they were full. Ships were lost, but paperwork said they arrived. Money vanished, but books said profits remained. Nobody wanted to expose the truth, because everyone was getting rich. Meanwhile, costs exploded. Wars were expensive. Armies needed pay. Ships needed repairs. Ports needed protection. The VOC was no longer a trading company. It was an empire. And empires are expensive. Debt began to grow, quietly, year after year. To survive, the company borrowed, and borrowed, and borrowed again. From banks, from investors, from the Dutch government. At first, it was manageable. Then it became dangerous. By the late 1700s, the VOC was drowning in debt. Profits were falling. Competition was rising. Smuggling was everywhere. Local resistance was growing. British power was expanding. French influence was spreading. Global trade was changing. The world was moving on. The VOC was stuck in the past. Then came disaster. In 1780, the Netherlands went to war with Britain. British ships attacked Dutch routes, captured cargo, destroyed fleets, blocked ports. The VOC lost its lifeline. Trade collapsed. Income vanished. Debts exploded. Now the truth could not be hidden. The company was bankrupt. In 1799, after nearly 2 centuries, the greatest corporation in history collapsed. Its assets were seized. Its debts were taken over. Its empire was transferred to the Dutch state. The VOC no longer existed. The first multinational, the first stock giant, the first corporate empire, dead. But its legacy survived. Everything you see today, stock markets, shareholder power, global corporations, supply chains, financial empires, corporate lobbying, all trace back to this company. The VOC proved something dangerous, that private money could rule nations, that corporations could replace kings, that profit could justify violence, that paperwork could command armies. And once the world learned that, it never forgot. Look around today. Tech giants influence governments, banks decide economic policy, corporations shape wars, supply chains control countries, the system is bigger, faster, more complex, but the DNA is the same. It started in Amsterdam 400 years ago with a company that promised easy money and delivered global power. And here is the warning. Every system built on greed eventually collapses. Every empire built on corruption eventually falls. Every structure that ignores reality eventually breaks. The VOC thought it was untouchable. It was wrong. And history keeps repeating this lesson over and over and over again. If you want to understand how power really works, how money shapes empires, how corporations replaced kings, and why the past explains the present, then you belong here. This channel is not about dates, not about textbooks, not about boring history. It is about hidden systems, invisible forces, and the money behind everything. So if you want more stories like this, more forgotten empires, more financial secrets, more truths they never taught you, subscribe and join us, because the next stories are even darker.